wanted to take an opportunity to introduce you to the Raspberry Pi. Now, many of you may have already heard of a Raspberry Pi. So you may actually have a Raspberry Pi and have used them already. If you haven't, well, this is your great introduction to the use of them. There has been several different Raspberry Pis that have been produced over the years. The original idea of the Raspberry Pi was to be able to create a computer for less than $25. And the goal of it was to be able to create a computer that was fully functional and usable in schools that may not necessarily have a lot of funds available to them, but they still needed a computer for every student. So the goal was to have a fully functioning computer with a keyboard, monitor, mouse, and everything, a network adapter and everything attached up to it, where the computer itself only cost $25, and then every student would be able to have access to one. And that's kind of where we are today. What we're looking at here is actually the Raspberry Pi OS, or the Raspbian OS, on my own computer. Now, for these sessions, for these classes, you will want to focus on either having a Raspberry Pi 4 or newer. You can get away with some of the older machines. Definitely a Raspberry Pi 3 would probably work. A 2 probably is getting a little too old. There's a couple of different form factors available to them. This is an image of the Raspberry Pi 4. It's pretty awesome, the fact of how much power you can get into it for as little cost as it takes. It has a couple of, it has dual VGA outputs there. It has audio output, it has a USB-C power input, has a couple of USB ports onto it, has a full-blown network adapter, has Wi-Fi built in, and then also has these header pins up here that can be used for connecting to external items such as lights, or receiving input from switches or buttons that you might want to have it tie into. So it's a fully functional computer. I believe the Raspberry Pi 4, the lowest end you can get, costs about $40, all the way up to the highest end, which will cost you about $100 when you consider including like the power cord and a case along with it. The alternative is this guy right here, which is what I'm actively using, which is a Raspberry Pi 400. It's exactly the same thing that we just saw right there, except it's built into a keyboard. And you can see there's the USB ports and the Ethernet port. Right there is where the SD card comes in, and the two, that's the SD card, and the two VGA adapters and the header pins where we can then plug in external devices. It's the exact same system. It just works a little bit differently. It has a slightly different form factor, but it's still exactly the same. So when you get into your Raspberry Pi, whether it's the 2, 3, 4, or the 400, you will fire it up and it will start off with a default configuration with a default username of Pi and 400. Pi is the username, Raspberry is the password. Obviously, you will want to change this as you move forward, and there's plenty of instructions for you to be able to do that. If you're not entirely sure, make this bigger. We can see here I am currently logged in as the user Pi. That's what the left-hand side means, Pi at, and then my computer's name is Raspberry Pi. If you're not entirely sure, what you can do is you type in password, PASSWD, in order to change your password. It then says, great, what's your current password? And you type in Raspberry. And I don't think that's my current password. Nope. But it will then ask you for what your new password is after that. But yeah, it is a fully functioning system. So we do have a full-blown web browser where we can browse around on the internet. We have text editors. We have programming options. So that if you're interested in working with Python, which the Pi actually stands for, there's various educational aspects. There's versions of LibreOffice, of various games, and so on available to it. I do want to take an opportunity while we're here to talk about some basic Linux commands. I just Googled basic Linux commands since this is what we're going to be working in, and it's going to be working in the command line quite a bit. First of all, when working with Raspberry Pi, click this button right up here in the upper left-hand corner, and that will open up a terminal, which is the command line. So some basic command line commands we might want to use. First one they say here is pwd, and if I type that, pwd, it tells me my working directory. Specifically, it stands for print working directory. And that tells me exactly where I am. So I can see how I'm in /home/pi. All the users on the computer have a folder in home. My user's name is pi, therefore it's /home/pi. If I was to create additional users, it would be /home/additional user. Next command is cd, and cd stands for change directory. So for instance, I can see, well, let's do an ls. ls is actually the next command, but ls stands for list. I can see I have a folder there called pictures. So if I wanted to cd into pictures, I wanted to change into the pictures directory, I do cd space pictures and enter. The prompt changes. I can now see, hey, I'm in the pictures directory. If I do a pwd, we'll also see that my working directory has changed as well. A couple of interesting things about the cd command. If you type cd without anything in it, it takes you back to your home directory, which you can tell by having that little tilde as the only part of your path. I can also do a cd/, which then takes me back to the home or to the root of the entire drive or entire computer. If I do a pwd at this point, I see I just have a /. So cd again takes me back to the home drive. Let's see, a couple other things. Let's see, it does tell me that cd with 2 dots will take me 1 layer up. So I'm currently in home pi. If I do a cd ... and enter, and then do pwd, I'll see I'm now in home. So if I want to go up 1 layer or down 1 layer, depending on how you're looking at it, just cd ... Next command here, ls, gives a listing of all of the files and folders in the current directory. So ls will show me, well, in this case, there's only 1 user. If I go into my home directory and I do an ls, it shows me all the folders, which are currently in blue, and all the files that are in my computer. If I go into, say, desktop, and I do an ls, I'll see all the files that are on my desktop. Apparently, I don't have any. The next command is cat. Cat stands for concatenate and can actually be used for 2 different items. Primarily, let's see, let's get into a folder that has something. Sensat. There we go. So I've got a couple of files there. The green means that they are programs. Cat is primarily used, for instance, if I type hello cat, hello world, cat is primarily used to send something to the screen. So if I hit enter at this point, it then prints out all of the contents of hello world out to the screen. If you look through the instructions here, you can actually join files together as well as convert them or edit them in an inline process. A CP command for copy. Linux people are extremely lazy and they don't want to type those extra letters for copy. They just want to do CP. So if I wanted to copy my hello world there, I would just say CP hello world. So CP and then the source and then the destination, and let's just do a hello world 2.py. And so I just copied hello world to hello world 2, and now when I do an ls, we'll see, yes, there is my original hello world and my new hello world 2. Next one is mv for move. So we can copy files from one place to another. We can also move them from one place to another. Just like what we did with the CP, you start off with a command, in this case mv, you specify the source, and then you specify the destination. So for instance, if I wanted to move that hello world file up 1 directory, mv hello world, and I actually want number 2. And I want to move that up 1 directory. Remember when we did the cd ... moved us up 1 directory? So if I do mv hello world as the source and then ... as the destination, that will move it up 1 directory. Now when I do an ls, I won't see hello world 2, but if I do a cd ... and ls, then we now see hello world 2 is there because I told it up 1 directory. Additionally, MV can also rename files. So if I don't like hello world 2, I can simply rename, so MV hello world 2, and then give it a different name for the destination, such as goaway.py. And then I do an ls and I see hello world just changed to go away. I'll go through just a couple more of these. First is mkdir. That's make directory. So we can see here in the blue, I have, for instance, a bookshelf, a desktop, documents, downloads. Maybe I want to create something called cats. I want a folder called cats that I can put all my cat pictures in. So that would be mkdir cats. And it is case sensitive. So in this case, I'm doing an uppercase cats. That means I'll have to use uppercase C in the future. But I do an ls and I now see, oh yes, I have a cats folder. Additionally, there's an rmdir and rm commands, which are remove directory and remove altogether. Rmdir only works if the directory is empty. rm will normally only delete files, but you can do a -r, which is recursive and will delete all the files in and directories it sees. And then probably the last one to talk about is what's called sudo or super user do. There are some commands that just in general you should not be doing on your own, but only an administrator should be doing. And it's generally best practice to run with a lower level of permissions than you normally need and simply elevate yourself when you want to do something. For instance, if I wanted to turn off this computer, I probably don't want the average user to be able to do that. So instead of simply saying shut down, I would want to, in front of that, need to use sudo shutdown. And what this does is for this one command, it elevates me from acting as a normal user to acting as the super administrator on the computer. So now, depending on how the system's configured, when I hit enter, it may or may not prompt me for the super user's password. And then once I type that in, perform the shutdown command. I believe this one will actually just run. No, it is scheduled to run in just a couple of minutes, and then we'll power off the machine. So there you go. That is an introduction to a Raspberry Pi, and there are lots and lots of commands there that you can use with regards to Linux. Definitely check them out. They're all extremely useful. Most all of those are extremely useful and can be used on any daily basis when working on a Raspberry Pi or pretty much any Linux machine.